I was kicked out of the house because my sister made up a story about me selling drugs. My parents believed her without any evidence. Growing up, my family placed a huge priority on appearances and achievements. My father, Benjamin, 57 male, works at a prestigious insurance company and is very respected in his area. My mother, Olivia, 56 female, is a biology professor and the ideal caring mother who is always there for us. However, everything in our family came with stipulations. We had to appear and behave flawlessly, and perfect was determined by how well we fulfilled my parents' expectations. My older sister, Isabella, 30 female, or Bella as everyone nicknamed her, embodied their dream. She's an engineer. She's 4 years older than me. She was highly successful and seemed to handle life with ease, constantly gaining praise, honors, and admiration from our parents. On the other hand, I was quieter, more reserved, and a little rebellious. I was intelligent, but I decided to pursue my own way. My hobbies did not always correspond with my parents' expectations of success. Well, I was an English major, which they did not appreciate, but they accepted our disagreements as long as I stayed within their parameters. I attempted to avoid crossing any lines, regardless of all our differences. I admired Bella. She was everything our parents intended, and I saw her as someone I could rely on and learn from. I never imagined she'd do something like this to me. 6 years ago, my world was turned upside down due to Bella's massive deception. I was 20, still in college and attempting to plan my future. Bella, our parents' favorite, was the golden kid. She was accomplished, responsible, and always on their good side. Meanwhile, I felt like I'd never measure up, always living in her shadow. Things changed radically for Bella. A few months before she told that falsehood, she begged me to assist her in concealing a potentially dangerous situation in which she was involved. Basically, she had made some poor decisions and wanted me to keep my mouth shut about them. She was involved with some question, able persons and situations which made me uncomfortable and did not sit well with me. She asked me to lie to our parents about it and provide her an alibi. She claimed it was a family duty and that I owed her because she had always supported me. However, something felt off and I didn't want to get involved in her plans. I was trying to keep my own life together, and lying for her seemed like a recipe for catastrophe. I told her I wouldn't do it since I didn't want to take any risks. She became enraged, acting as if my refusal was a major betrayal. Her reaction was powerful, almost frightening. I recall her warning that if I crossed her, I would regret it, and that she would find a way to hold me accountable. At the time, I assumed it was just theatrics and she would settle down. Looking back, that moment appeared to be the catalyst for everything that followed. Within weeks, Bella began to discreetly undercut me, soon after she told our parents a massive falsehood. She told our parents I was selling drugs in college. This was a massive, terrible falsehood that stunned me. I had never used drugs, let alone sold them, but Bella spoke so convincingly that my parents believed her without question to this day. I don't understand why she did it. We weren't particularly close, but neither were we enemies. I mean, she is or was my sister. I could never have imagined she would do something so wrong to me. This was a falsehood that could damage my future, and I honestly believed it did. My father, Benjamin, responded like a hurricane. He did not ask any questions or allow me to clarify. His rage struck me hard, deeper than I imagined. I sensed his despair and disgust as if I were no longer his daughter. My mother, Olivia, was quiet, but her silence hurt just as much. She looked at me with tremendous disappointment, as if I had shattered all of her expectations for me. Meanwhile, Bella stood to one side, expressionless. She didn't say anything or acknowledge the chaos she caused. She just watched my folks kick me out. That day, I was thrown out of the house. I had no hope of explaining or understanding what was going on. I left with nothing and had to drop out of college since I couldn't afford it. Without their help, my future felt like it had vanished overnight. I spent the next few months living with friends, moving from couch to couch and doing whatever work I could find. I felt hopeless. I had big goals and everything I had worked for was just gone. I tried to contact my parents, thinking they would see the truth. Every call resulted in my being turned away. My father would hang up before I could say anything, and my mother would simply repeat her disparaging statements, refusing to listen or consider them inappropriate. I kept hoping they'd see through Bella's falsehoods and remember who I truly was, but they'd already decided. In their view, I was guilty, and that was it. Years have passed, I gradually learned how to reconstruct my life from scratch. I saved every penny from my waitressing job and then returned to school part-time. It was difficult, but I was determined to show myself that I could build my future without their assistance. Throughout this journey, I met folks who became my chosen family friends who recognized my genuine self and stood by me after my own family had turned away. They helped me recognize my worth, improved my recovery, and restored my self-esteem. I eventually graduated, obtained a solid job, and began living a life I was proud of. Then I found my ideal fiancé, Mark, 27 million. He was gentle and understanding everything I had been lacking. When I told him about my family, he didn't criticize or pity me. Instead, he explained that family is more than just blood. I have the right to select who comes into my life. With him, I actually felt loved and accepted. For the first time, I began to believe that I did not require my parents' approval to be complete. As our wedding day approached, thoughts of my family reappeared. I hadn't seen them in 6 years. Part of me wanted to reach out and give them the opportunity to make amends, but every time I thought about it, bitter memories flooded back. Rejection, embarrassment, and how they had discarded me without a second thought. Why should they be a part of one of the happiest days of my life if they were not present? At my most difficult times, I received an unexpected message from my father. I was surprised to see his name appear on my phone. After all these years. The message was brief and straightforward. He informed me that my mother was seriously ill and wanted to meet me. Since she missed me, there was no apology or acknowledgement of the past. There was no awareness of the harm they have caused. Just a little word on my mother's illness and her desire to reconnect. He also indicated that he was aware of my approaching wedding and that he and my mother wanted to be involved. It felt weird and weighty to realize they had suddenly longed to reach out. Where was this compassion while I was battling to survive after they abandoned me? They missed my graduation, first job, and pretty much everything else throughout my life. Now, when my mother is ill, they act as if those 6 years didn't matter, as if I could just forgive and forget. It appeared so unjust. I may sound selfish, but this caught me off guard, and I didn't feel good about it. They weren't present during the difficult times, but now they wanted to be a part of the hap. Once, a rush of emotions overtook me. I felt guilty when I thought about my mother being unwell. Despite everything, she was still my mother, and the thought of her suffering was difficult to bear. I realized that her desire to see me was not solely for the wedding. It could be about seeking closure or making peace before it's too late, but forgiving them felt impossible. After everything they had put me through, abandonment, disbelief, and the difficulties I faced alone. How could I allow them back into my life as if nothing had happened? Following the text, I received several more texts from relatives I had no idea existed. They said that it was terrible of me not to include my parents in my wedding, and that whatever happened recently should not be considered in light of everything they had done for me throughout my life. This definitely got on my nerves. It was hilarious how they came up when I didn't ask my parents to my wedding but couldn't help me when I was almost homeless. I told my fiancé about it, and he immediately told me to ignore my relatives' texts because they were irrelevant. He has informed me that he would support whatever decision I make, but he has also reminded me that my wedding day should be about us being happy and enjoying ourselves, rather than something from the past that hurts and the unresolved feelings that come with it. He advised me to examine what would make me happy in the long run, not just right now. I keep wondering if pushing them away now will merely cause me more anguish, or will allowing them return make everything worse for me. I'm feeling conflicted. I've worked hard to forge my own path and construct a life without them. Part of me wants to defend it, and I'm afraid that letting them back in will damage everything I've made. But part of me feels bad, especially when my mother's health is a concern. I can't deny that she's attempting to reach out now, even if it feels like it's too late. I keep believing that involving them in the wedding will allow me to finally move on and leave the past behind. But then I remember that they abandoned me, based solely on Bella's words. No proof or anything. I'm not sure whether I can just forget about the previous 6 years. My wedding is in a few months, and I am really confused. Should I leave things as they are or let them back in? To be really honest, I'm not sure if I want them back in my life. Therefore, I need some advice AA for not allowing my parents back into my life after they believed my sister's lies and abandoned me. Update 1. It's been a few weeks since I posted. I read a few comments, and I'm happy that most people believe I am not being unreasonable here. Anyway, I still feel like I'm trapped in a whirlwind. I was quite nervous after hearing the news from my father regarding my mother's illness and wanting to visit me. I considered blocking their phone numbers, but I was also concerned that by not giving them a chance, I would come to regret it. Then, surprisingly, my sister Bella reached out. I received an unexpected SMS from her informing me that she had learned of my impending marriage. She added that she knew Mom was sick and wanted to rectify things before it was too late. It seemed like everything had changed in an instant. Bella, the one who had brought me so much pain, was now discussing family and healing. She expressed her longing for me and highlighted the importance of our family's reunion. She explained that I had always been a part of her life and that she wanted us to be at peace. But all I could think of was her betrayal, which had ruined everything. My father's message had already troubled me, and Bella's text simply added to the perplexity. What did she expect of me? Did she truly believe I could forgive her with a few kind words? She refused to apologize or acknowledge the issues she caused. Instead, she continued emphasizing how family was the most essential thing, especially since Mom's health was diminishing. It all felt false, as if she was only reaching out now to relieve her guilt. I couldn't help but wonder if there was another motive for her message, one that I wasn't perceiving. She had been cold and calculating when she lied about me, and I couldn't get the impression that it was all about her image. The prospect of seeing Bella after so many years was like revisiting an old sore. Still, the fact that my mother was ill made me feel differently. I felt awful for wanting to keep them out when there was a chance. She wanted to make amends, but every time I considered forgiving them, every memory from the past came flooding back even stronger. I wondered if they'd ever acknowledge the troubles they produced. For me, the idea of them attending my wedding felt almost ludicrous, as if they could simply show up as proud parents. After all this time, I continued thinking about my fiancé's recommendation to prioritize my long-term happiness. My wedding should be a joyful celebration, not a source of stress. But how could I find peace if I was still angry? Could I truly move on if I never allowed them back into my life? I couldn't see Bella sitting in the front row like nothing had happened. It felt awful to even consider including them after what they had done. I decided to respond to Bella, but I kept it quick. I told her I needed some time to consider and didn't know how I felt about her, or our parents attending the wedding. I remarked that I was unsure how I felt about them after everything that had happened between us. I'm not sure why, but I hope she understood. However, her response was simply another message about family with no indication of regret or acknowledgement of her conduct. She even had the audacity to declare that she understood my emotions, but hoped I would see the larger picture and let the past go for Mom's sake. After her response, I was more perplexed than ever. I thought having time to dwell on my emotions would help, but it actually made things worse. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years began to contact me, encouraging me to let go of my anger and warning me that if I didn't reunite with my family soon, I'd regret it. They seemed to only know a portion of the tale and believed I was being unfair. Their words hurt, but I realized they had no idea what I had gone through. This simply increased my certainty and fury. A few days later, my dad sent me another mail with further information concerning Mom's condition. He didn't give much information, but it was evident she wasn't doing well. He said Mom had always loved me and wanted us to be a family again. It felt weird, as if he was attempting to make me feel guilty. Rather than apologizing or acknowledging my grief, I questioned whether he comprehended the consequences of their actions. I spent several hours considering what I would say if I met them again. I imagined telling them about the years of struggle, the nights spent feeling completely alone, and the betrayal I still held. But deep inside, I knew it wouldn't change anything. They'd probably find a way to excuse their actions or reject my emotions, claiming I was being exaggerated. Still, the notion of my mother being ill weighed on me. Was I wrong to hold on to my rage when she could be facing significant consequences? My fiancé has been an excellent source of support, reminding me that my sentiments are valid and that I can establish my own boundaries. He pledged to stand by me regardless of what I decided. I consider myself fortunate to have someone who actually understands my suffering and does not encourage me to forgive solely for the sake of appearances. He underlined that it is my decision, but I can feel the weight of it all. As the wedding date approaches, the pressure builds. I'm torn between wanting to let my parents and Bella back into my life for some peace and shielding myself from further pain. My mother's condition complicates matters even further. I'm worried that if I don't let them back in now, I'll regret it later. However, I'm concerned that opening the door would result in even more heartache. Bella's letter keeps replaying in my head, making me question whether I'm being too harsh, but then I realize that she never expressed regret or acknowledged the harm she caused. How can I move forward when the past still feels so fresh? I'm left wondering if forgiving them will actually help me recover or simply reopen old scars. My wedding should be a pleasant moment, but it is currently marred with unresolved feelings. I'm at a stage where I'm not sure if bringing them back in will offer me any closure or simply more pain. So here I am still hesitant and contemplating. Is inviting them back into my life the right decision? Or am I setting myself up for disappointment? Update 2. Hey, it has been roughly 3 weeks since my last post. A few days after the previous update, I reached my limit and went to see my family after weeks of putting it off. I couldn't ignore my mother's critical illness. Part of me wanted to keep my distance, but I felt guilty and I knew I'd regret not seeing her one more time if she didn't improve. It was an hour-long drive to their place, and it was difficult to remain calm, but I kept telling myself I was doing this for my mother, not for Dad or Bella. But that didn't make things any simpler. I was frightened to see the house again. I have so many memories there. I had lived in that house for my entire life. Until 6 years ago, I was forced to go, and now I feel compelled to return. When I got to the house, it felt odd it had been so long, but everything seemed practically the same. To my astonishment, my mother was the only one present, seated in a chair near the window. I barely recognized her. My father had not arrived yet, which was somewhat of a relief, but I knew the confrontation was still imminent. It pained my heart to see her so weak and fatigued. She appeared so small, and I just wanted to hug and cry. I could only think about how much time had been lost. We could have spent a lot of time together if Bella hadn't pulled that stunt. I wouldn't have been as stunned by Mom's situation. If I had been by her side all those years, I would have been able to aid her in some manner. My old sister, however, denied me this opportunity. Mom looked both thrilled and sad to see me for the first time in my life. I didn't perceive my mother as the authoritative figure I strove so hard to impress. She was merely a mother, a human who had made mistakes. She sincerely apologized. She was pretty clear that she regretted not reaching out to me. She explained that she had not contacted out in all these years because she was humiliated. She stated that by the time she discovered Bella had lied, it was too late and she assumed I would never forgive her. She also mentioned that she had considered reaching out to me several times. She penned several letters that she never sent. She apologized multiple times. Hearing her articulate it made me feel both sad and relieved. There was no discussion of family obligations or expectations. There was no compulsion to forgive her or forget what happened. She simply accepted responsibility for her mistakes and apologized. It was too much to take in. A part of me wanted to shout and tell her how difficult it was for me, but I couldn't. I just hugged her and told her it was fine. I truly forgave her. It was as if I never got furious at her. She was simply left with regret, and I didn't want to make matters worse. I only wanted to be by her side. My father walked in and the atmosphere immediately altered. He entered with confidence as if he had done nothing wrong. He did not apologize or acknowledge the anguish he had caused me. Instead, he dismissed my feelings as insignificant, advising that I move on for the sake of the family. He appeared to believe he was the victim, since I had withdrawn myself for so long. He completely missed my mother's point of view. I tried to remain calm, but rage rose within me when I conveyed how hurt I was by everything that had happened, and how I had made ends meet over the last 6 years. He disregarded it with phrases like, "Oh, we thought we were doing what was best for the family." He refused to accept responsibility for his acts, and kept shifting the focus, making it appear as if I was to blame for not contacting them throughout the years. My mother looked concerned, but she remained silent. Perhaps she was tired of Dad and our never-ending disputes. My father persisted in his efforts to persuade me that my decision to stay away was wrong. It was frustrating, and I had a familiar sense of impotence from my childhood, as if my voice didn't matter. When I asked about Isabella and where she was, they replied she couldn't make it. It was strange because she had reached out mentioning family and forgiveness. But when it came time to confront the matter, she was missing deep down. I wasn't really surprised. I assumed she would avoid any serious disagreement, even if she was the one who began it. She had caused the commotion and left everyone else to deal with it. After the visit, I was fatigued. Instead of the tranquility I desired, I sat silently as my father lectured me, hoping he could persuade me to forgive them. However, I understood I didn't need his approval, and didn't have to fit in with a family that had previously let me down so readily. Before I departed, my mother requested that I return soon. She sounded desperate and appeared sorrowful. I wasn't sure if I'd be back, but I couldn't say goodbye forever. I hugged her and promised to keep in touch, encouraging her to contact me whenever she wanted or needed to. I couldn't think straight on the journey back to my place. I felt conflicted. My mother's apology was genuine and meant more to me than I realized, but my father's attitude and Isabella's absence made me bitter, bringing back the anguish I had tried to ignore. I wanted to forgive them and go on, but I wasn't sure how to do so without losing my mind. I forgive Mom. I don't have anything against her anymore, but what about Dad and Bella? I'm not quite sure about them. My wedding is in a month, and I'm not sure whether I'll invite them or keep them in my life. I'm confident I'll stay in touch with Mom. I might invite her. However, as I already stated, I am unsure about Dad and Bella. Perhaps it is best to go without them, maintaining a safe distance for my own peace of mind. It is difficult, especially since my mother may not have much time left. I feel a mix of remorse, hatred, and love, and I'm not sure whether I'll ever get the closure I desire. I honestly am not sure what my next step will be. I'll keep you updated if anything happens. Update 3. Hello everyone. It has been a long time since I provided an update. It has been 6 months and so much has transpired. I would have provided an update sooner, but I simply wanted to comprehend everything. Mark and I had a small private wedding after everything with my family. We wanted a quiet day focused on us. I decided to invite my mother and father. My mother was quite ill and I knew I'd be disappointed if she couldn't go. It was easy to invite her because she had made an effort with me and everything was well. She admitted her mistakes, and I could tell she really wished things had been different. I decided not to invite Bella. It wasn't to hurt her. I just couldn't trust her not to cause additional turmoil. Bella texted me after the ceremony, furious about not being included. I simply informed her I didn't want her there and blocked her number. That seemed like a relief, like if I had completed a hard chapter. Unfortunately, approximately 2 months after the wedding, my mother died. She wasn't in pain. She died quietly with me and Dad by her side. I was grateful for the time I spent with her, even though it was brief. In her final days, she appeared softer and more like the mother. I knew we would sometimes sit in silence, which felt comforting. I was able to say farewell, something I will always appreciate. My mom's funeral was one of the most difficult days of my life. It was a casual gathering of relatives and a few close friends. I wanted to recognize and celebrate her life. Bella was also uninvited, but we assumed she would not go because she had never contacted us following Mom's death. But on the day of the funeral, she stormed in demanding to know why she wasn't at the wedding and making everything about her. It became chaotic. Her ranting drowned out the lovely things expressed about my mother. I felt both humiliated and hurt. Dad had reached his limit. He was already struggling after losing his mother. My parents were high school sweethearts. They'd been together for nearly 40 years, and this was plainly the worst thing that had ever happened to him. Bella's selfishness sent him over the edge. He rose up and instructed her to go. He stated that she was insulting Mom's memory and that he never wanted to see her again. The room was fraught with anxiety. Everyone was stunned into silence. I had conflicting feelings. Part of me was happy that Dad had finally faced her, but I was also concerned about the implications. Bella rushed out complaining about how unfair it was, but I felt it was necessary to save the day from her annex. It felt like a watershed moment for both my father and me. Even though we were not particularly close, we felt that Mom deserved better than a raucous burial. Strangely, this incident brought my father and me closer. Our relationship isn't terrific, and there's certainly some stress, but we've managed to remain civil. He hasn't apologized for his part in everything, but he is now respecting my boundaries and has expressed a desire to have me in his life. We may not be close, but it is tranquil, which is enough for now. Baby steps, I suppose. Being in the position I am in right now feels strange. I used to think I needed a great moment of forgiveness, but now I realize I just needed to let go. Losing my mother was difficult, but it brought me closure. I can keep the pleasant memories of her and leave the rest behind. I do not intend to reconnect with Bella. I've realized that not everyone knows how the difficulties they create can affect others, which is good. I don't need her in my life anymore. Now I'm focusing on my relationship with Mark and creating something positive with him. Finally, I'd like to thank everyone for their support throughout this difficult period. Your warm comments and understanding have meant a lot to me. Sharing my tale has been a relief, and knowing that others care has helped.